Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Thursday, June 20th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And writer Chris Evangelista.
Hello, folks.
Okay, so we've been having this discussion about is there like a really good prequel movie? And we got another email. Peter from Stockholm wrote in that he believes that the 2011 movie The Thing is a really good prequel to the 1982 movie The Thing. It ends off right where The Thing begins. I have not seen this. Have you guys seen the new The Thing?
It's really terrible.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's like one of the worst mainstream like IP movies of the past 10 years. I think it's really terrible, and I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who stars in that movie, and I think like who else is in that film? It's got a good cast, but oh man, yeah, that is a really terrible film, and I think it's an awful prequel because it's basically just a remake, right, Chris?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same movie. Then at the very end, it's like, oh, it's a prequel. It doesn't count. It's
So it sounds like I don't need to see this film, and it also seems like you guys are suggesting that Peter from Sweden, our loyal listener, is wrong.
I mean, if he likes it, more power to him. But I don't think it's that good.
Speaking of people who are wrong, yesterday's episode was recorded before the early buzz for Spider-Man Far From Home had hit the web, and we had only talked about your reaction, Ben, which seemed to be lukewarm, right? And it seems like everybody else seems to love this film. You wrote up a compilation for the site. What are people saying?
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as to say that they're wrong. Everybody has their own.
I was saying you were wrong.
Oh, me? Okay, all right, yeah, fine. Okay, sure, Peter. You wanna play it that way? That's fine. Okay, I see how it goes.
I will say this: out of everybody on the site, I think usually my reaction to a movie tends to skew more towards you. I mean, there are occasions where you are wrong, like Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, but I tend to agree more with you. So I'm a little bit worried here because you are the only one in this list that seems to have not loved this film.
Yeah, a lot of people. Eric Davis from Fandango says that the movie is funny, exciting, romantic, goofy, and follows Homecoming in being this brilliant ground-level look at Spidey's world and how the events of Avengers Endgame impacted everyday life. Lots of twists and turns, plus some adorable summer romances, too. I'm a big fan. That is generally representative of the overall sort of critical consensus as it exists right now. Matt Singer, who's a huge Spider-Man fan, has been reading the comics, is a huge, like maybe the biggest Spider-Man fan that I know, said Far From Home had the difficult task of following two epic Avengers movies and Spider-Verse, and succeeds by telling a smaller classical story about Peter Parker caught between what he wants and what responsibility demands. Pure catnip for Spidey fans like me. So, yes, I think there are a lot of good ideas in this movie. For me, it maybe is just a bit too sprawling. It has maybe a bit too much going on, but I'm very curious to see what you guys think about it because there's a lot to dig into.
It's funny how you call it sprawling, but then the last quote you read said it was a small story.
I know, yeah, that's the thing. But like by its very nature, the movie is called Far From Home, and it's about the characters going overseas and going on vacation, and it's a global movie. Whereas Homecoming truly was like a small, intimate movie, especially in comparison to something like this, which opens up the scale. Like I said, sort of like by its very nature, like that's the intrinsic thing in this movie is like expanding the scope and making it a larger scale and all of that. But there's some really interesting stuff in here especially about the exploration of Tony Stark's legacy. So I'm excited to see what you guys think about it and where Team Slash Film as a whole sort of comes down on this movie. But I had a lot of people talking to me on Twitter and stuff yesterday being like, what's the deal with this movie, trying to like gauge my reaction because I was the one who had like the most I don't know,
it's not even like you disliked it. It was
right. Yeah, it's a totally fine movie. I think I actually, in my tweet, I said that it was a B-/C+. Like, I couldn't decide right when I tweeted. And the more I think about it, it's probably closer to a B-. But which is like, yeah, it's a fine superhero movie. Yeah, it didn't really blow me away in the same way that it seems to have really landed for a lot of other people.
Okay. Chucky is back. Child's Play is coming out, and the early buzz is hit. Chris, you haven't seen this film yet. You're seeing it tonight?
Yeah, I'm seeing it pretty much when I'm done with work.
Well, we will get a review from you on the site for tomorrow. But Ben, what are people saying about this film?
So Jacob Hall, the managing editor of Slash Film, saw this movie last night, and I'll read his tweet. Oof, everything that was charming and deranged about the original movies has been remixed into something so half-baked and dull that I wonder why it even exists. How do you make Chucky, a psychopathic killer doll, boring? They pulled it off somehow. So, yeah, that's pretty harsh. Matt Donato, who's a frequent Slash Film contributor, also was not a big fan of this movie. He said in his review, Child's Play is funniest when it shouldn't be, unsuccessfully frightful, and never the Mr. Robot diversion that Chucky 2.0 deserves. But it's weird. This is not a movie that has engendered totally negative responses across the board. Coming Soon called it deeply unsettling because it is so close to reality. It's a little hyperbolic, but let's face it, machines run our lives, and sometimes there are terrifying consequences. Empire did not appreciate the idiotic characters that apparently populate this film. They said, what we have here is a film populated by people so dense that they don't take the batteries out of the doll the second it malfunctions, and when that happens, the film soon malfunctions with it. So it sort of seems like the reactions are kind of all over the place on this one.
Okay, so it seems like until I hear what Chris has to say about this movie, I'm not decided if I need to see it or not. So
that's right. I'm the final word on all things. So wait for me, everyone.
Yeah, you'll determine if I use my AMC A-list pass or not. So, Chris, the responsibility is in your hands.
All right, I'll do my best.
Let's move from one horror franchise to another. Let's talk about Halloween. I know this is a film that you loved, Chris, and after you saw it, you were like, I hope they don't make a sequel. And now they're making a sequel.
Right. So, yeah, Halloween, the 2018 sequel / reboot, was a huge hit, and I knew deep down that meant it was going to have a sequel. I mean, it cost like $10 million to make. It made $225 million worldwide, which is a huge return on investment. So they'd be foolish to not make a sequel. At the same time, I was really hoping that if they made a sequel, they would bring in a whole new set of characters, simply because, spoiler alert for 2018's Halloween, that film does a great job wrapping up the Laurie Strode story, the Jamie Lee Curtis character. It gives her closure. It lets her take back her own narrative. It lets her finally beat Michael Myers. And, she sort of closes the door on her past trauma. So I kind of wanted her to have that happy ending. But it looks like Jamie Lee Curtis is coming back. It seems like Blumhouse and Universal, they're gearing up to start shooting this fall. Jamie Lee Curtis is all but assured to come back. David Gordon Green, who directed the last movie, is probably coming back to direct as well. Judy Greer, Andy Matichak, who played Jamie Lee Curtis's daughter and granddaughter, respectively, they're expected to come back. So it looks like everyone is coming back. And I'm conflicted about this because, again, on one hand, I love the 2018 movie, and I'd also, the prospect of getting more Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween is, from a fan perspective, too good to pass up. At the same time, it's kind of a bummer that Laurie Strode is apparently not going to get that closure. And I really hope they don't bring her back and have her die, because that would be like a huge cheat to be like, she finally got closure. Oh, never mind. She's now being murdered by Michael Myers. I really hope they come up with a really good reason for her to come back beyond, we want to make more money.
But her side, what is even the good pitch for this movie that Michael just comes back all of a sudden? I feel like what is, I feel like Blum and these people involved would have to have something better than the original Halloween sequels.
Yeah. I honestly can't even think of what the premise of this is going to be, because the premise of the 2018 film was good. It was solid. It was, they ignored all the other sequels, and it was basically a direct sequel to the first film. And it was all about how Laurie was dealing with the trauma all these years and so on, and how she estranged her family. I don't know what you do with a sequel to that. I mean, I guess maybe it's about the Strode women becoming closer, because, they spent almost all of the 2018 film, at odds. And at the end of the film, everyone realized that Laurie was right. So maybe the sequel is about them bonding more. I don't know, but I don't know how you do that without just being...
What if the sequel is not even a horror film? It's just a drama, a Strode family drama in the aftermath of this whole,
Honestly, I would love that, but I know that's not going to happen. But I would love to just see like this indie drama about the Strode women getting over their trauma and becoming a family again. But
it sounds like something that David Gordon Green would actually do, because he has like roots in those types of indie dramas.
Yeah, maybe he's convinced Blumhouse to let him do that. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to Tiffany Haddish, who's going from girls trip to bad trip. Ben, what is this?
Yeah, so we just saw a trailer. I had no idea that this movie existed, but there's a film called Bad Trip, which is opening this October, which sort of seems like a weird release date for a movie like this. But the premise of the film is that Tiffany Haddish, Eric Andre, and Lil Rel Howery, who appeared in Get Out, are starring in a movie that sort of blends a traditional narrative story with a prank show format. So if you see the trailer, it's like Eric Andre and Lil Rel are like best friends, and they steal their sister's car to go on a cross country adventure, and Tiffany Haddish, I think, plays the sister, and she is like breaking out of jail to join them on this trip or something. The actual narrative elements are a little bit unclear, because this trailer mostly focuses on the prank stuff, which includes like Tiffany Haddish burying or emerging from underground, like out of the dirt just outside of a prison, wearing like a prison jumpsuit, where all these people are standing there, and she like threatens them and runs away, and these people are like freaking out. So it's an interesting mix of stuff that I haven't really seen before.
With Johnny Knoxville, you put him in makeup and stuff, and people don't recognize him. But Tiffany Haddish, I feel like, is all over TV. Like every time I go to the movies, there's some kind of new Tiffany Haddish, comedy trailer playing before the movie.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing, because she does have her hair in dreadlocks, but I don't really, or cornrows, excuse me, but I don't really think that they do much to change her appearance. And I guess Eric Andre and Lil Rel are not as well known, but yeah, you're right. I mean, Tiffany Haddish in the past 2 years, she has hit pure market saturation as far as I'm concerned. She's been in a ton of stuff. She's all over, TV shows, movies, everything. And so I don't really know where in the country this was shot where people wouldn't immediately recognize her. Maybe that says a lot about the state of modern movie stardom. But for me, the most interesting thing about this movie is the blending of these styles, especially when younger audience members, younger viewers, seem to be spending more time watching stuff on YouTube than actually going to the movies. And here comes a movie that seems to be sort of co-opting YouTube aesthetics and blending it into something with a more traditional narrative. So I hope that this is not the beginning of an evolution of film and its style as we know it, because that's kind of terrifying to think that this medium that we love so much would basically just begin to reflect YouTube styles over, in order to stay alive. But, the film industry is not exactly doing great. So this is an interesting experiment, if nothing else.
I mean, I will say, the Jackass movies were enjoyable, but they really didn't have a narrative. And then there was Bad Grandpa, which have either of you guys seen Bad Grandpa?
I skipped that one. Chris, did you see it?
No, I think I saw the trailer and I said, I will never see that. So no.
It's surprisingly better than you think it's going to be. Not to say it's good, but they were able to create a narrative that put them in situations like, restaurants on a road trip where they could pull these obnoxious, outrageous stunts that fit along in this road trip adventure story. So, I mean, I could definitely see more films doing this, but you make a good point here, Ben. Is this the beginning of the end of, theatrical cinema?
I certainly hope not. It's also worth mentioning that Jeff Tremaine, who is one of the masterminds behind Jackass, and I think he either directed or produced Bad Grandpa, is the writer of this movie. I think he's a producer as well. So there seems to be some shared DNA between those concepts and this film.
I do think there is like a more of a genre to be made out of reality films, and by that I don't mean documentaries. Like I've always wanted to see like a film where they like, I mean, I guess Darren Brown has done some of this on like his Netflix shows, but like put a guy in like a Die Hard situation and hide cameras and make that into a movie where everybody's an actor. You know, it's Truman Show style, except for that one guy. I think that could be really compelling. Anyways, okay, let's move on to Barry. The breakout star of Barry has been cast in Bill and Ted Face the Music. Chris, what do we know?
Yes, so Anthony Carrigan, who is wonderful on Barry as NoHo Hank, is moving up in the world, and I'm glad to see that. He's just been cast in Bill and Ted 3, a.k.a. Bill and Ted Face the Music, as that film's villain. There's no real details about what his character is, other than he's the, quote, relentless adversary of Bill and Ted in the film. But just the fact that he's in the movie at all is exciting to me, because I love the idea of picturing him acting against Keanu Reeves, because I never thought I would see that ever, and now it's going to happen.
He's one of the best parts of Barry. I love him so much, but I'm wondering, like, is it wrong that we're, like, casting him in another weirdo villain role? I
mean, it depends. I guess it's really his call. Like, he could always say no to the gig if he doesn't like it. I think, you know, he seems like an actor who, you know, he's been trying to break out for so many years, and now that he's doing it, he's probably just happy to, you know, do such big projects. It's kind of like Ben Mendelsohn, where he always plays creepy guys, and he seems fine with doing that because, you know, he struggled for years as this Australian character actor, and now he's like in everything as quote unquote the villain, but he's fine with that because he loves to work.
Sure. Okay, let's talk about Spider-Man, which is being written by J.J. Abrams. I'm not talking about the film. I'm talking about a new comic book series. Ben, what is going on here?
Yeah, so earlier this week, Marvel Comics on Twitter posted an image of a number 4 that looked as if it was, you know, webbed up like Spider-Man style. And people were wondering what the hell this is. There were some rumors going around that maybe Sam Raimi's abandoned Spider-Man 4 movie might be being turned into a comic book. That ended up not happening because that number 4 the next day turned to a number 3, and it turned out to be just a countdown to an announcement. And that announcement was revealed today, which is that J.J. Abrams, of course, from the Star Wars movies, and if you are listening to this podcast and you don't know who J.J. Abrams is, I don't know what to tell you. He is going to be writing a new limited Spider-Man comic book series alongside his 20-year-old son, Henry Abrams, and the new comic is going to introduce a villain that we've never seen before called Cadaverous to the Spider-Man universe. Sarah Pichelli is doing the art of this comic, and Dave Stewart is doing the coloring. So, that's basically it. We know it's a 5-part limited series. It's going to debut in September. And, for everybody out there who is like, why the hell is J.J. Abrams' son writing this? He knows that that there's a lot of nepotism going on, and that the reason that he's able to do this is because he has a famous father. His quote in the New York Times, who did this big sort of interview with both of them, is, obviously there's an undeniable privilege here, and I'm not ignorant of that. I think part of creating is creating on your own. My hope and my goal is to do that after this. I just can't believe that this opportunity was afforded to us. It's been a great excuse, especially during the year when I'm in college, to just call and talk about the story. So it sounds like he'll theoretically be breaking off onto his own and maybe just using this as a launch pad of getting his name out there, which I don't know. I'm sure people have complicated feelings about.
I feel like he probably doesn't need a Spider-Man comic as a launch pad when your last name's Abrams.
Right.
But I don't know. What do I know? And it's interesting. We should mention that it looks like J.J. Abrams is going to Warner Brothers. Is that correct?
I think the contract has not been officially signed yet, but it seems very, very likely that, yes, the mega deal, the development deal that has been, we've talked about on this podcast before, it seems like Warner Media is going to win that battle and secure J.J. Abrams for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so it is possible that J.J. Abrams could be writing for Spider-Man and Superman in the course of like a year.
Yeah, I guess that is possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
From Marvel Comics to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Kevin Feige has been doing some press for the upcoming Spider-Man Far From Home. He didn't talk to us. I'm not bitter about it at all. And but he did talk to some people, and we got some bits from those interviews, including his want to include Keanu Reeves in the MCU. Chris, what do we know?
Yeah, so as is usually the case when a Marvel movie comes out, Kevin Feige does the rounds and everyone asks him a million little questions about future Marvel stuff. And he either gives an answer or he dances around the answer because he either doesn't have one or he doesn't want to spoil things. One thing that came up is, would Keanu Reeves ever be in the MCU? Because everyone loves Keanu Reeves now, and rightfully so. And according to Kevin Feige, he calls Keanu Reeves almost every time a new Marvel movie is being made. I don't really know how true that is or how hyperbolic that is, but that's what he said. He said he literally talks to Keanu Reeves about pretty much every Marvel movie, and they're just trying to find the right one for him. So he adds that he doesn't know if it will ever happen, but he really wants it to happen. So make of that what you will.
I wonder what characters he's met with Marvel about. Like, I could totally see, like, Guardians of the Galaxy or something like that.
Or, like, I feel like he would be a great, like, Doctor Strange. Like, he'd be better than Benedict Cumberbatch. No offense to Benedict Cumberbatch. It'd just be more interesting casting, I think.
Yeah, it'd be a lot different. I feel like the big criticism of Cumberbatch is it's too much like Tony Stark. And I feel like if Keanu Reeves was in that role, it would be that criticism would not be there, even with the story. Yeah. Okay. That brings us to the end of today's Slash Film Daily. Chris, where can we find more of your work online?
I am at slashfilm.com every day, and I'm on Twitter at CEvangelista413.
Ben, where can we find you?
I am also at slashfilm.com. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Ben Pears.
You can find me at SlashFilm on all social media. You can find all the stories we talked about on today's podcast on slashfilm.com and linked in the show notes. This podcast is published every weekday on iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to Peter at slashfilm.com. Leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention the email on the air in the mailbag. And please head on over to our iTunes page and rate us and review us. Tell your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you tomorrow.